guys, it's Erica here, and author of First Dollar Feeling, here for this week's episode of First Dollar Friday. This week is a little bit different. I am celebrating my birthday. I turned 35 this week. And I wanted to spend a moment kind of doing some introspection and explaining a little bit about how I got where I am, so you can understand some of the journey that led to First Dollar Feeling as it is today. So a big thing that, I want to make sure people understand is why small business? Why is that a focus? I've built a 16-year career in marketing and communications focused almost exclusively on small business endeavors and nonprofits that support small business. Now we hear a lot of other businesses that say, hey, support small business, all of that, but we don't always get to why that's so important and what the real passion is, where that was founded for each individual person, because it is different for each person. It's almost become a buzz phrase versus something that actually carries any actual weight. So I wanted to share a little bit more about my story and how that led to First Dollar Feeling and some of the things that we've got coming up in the upcoming months. So I was raised in a little town in Alaska called Wasilla. It's about 60 miles north of Anchorage. And most of my experience growing up was everybody around us, all of my friends' parents, everyone was either military, they worked on the oil fields, or they were working for some of the local utility companies, or they worked in or owned a small business. I grew up in the kind of environment where we didn't go to a chain store to even get our groceries. We went to a local grocery store, one that was it's completely unique to the state of Alaska. We didn't get a Target in my hometown until I was a teenager. It was an event growing up to go drive the hour with all 6 of my brothers and sisters, and yes, I grew up in a family of 8. To go into town is going to Anchorage to get school clothes every year. Like, it was a huge event. Everything else that we did was all local ownership. My brother's band teacher and eventually his son owned the local music shop where we all bought our instruments. I still shop there for my son's stuff. So it's really that community. We knew most of these small business owners either directly or by extension. I used to joke that it wasn't 6 degrees of separation in Wasilla, it was more like 2. Everybody knew everybody. It was really kind of that one-horse town when I was growing up, and it's become quite a bit bigger since then, but that was a lot of my foundation for my love of small businesses. That's all I knew. And then as I grew up and went into the world, I spent some time in Dallas. I've spent some time in Seattle. I've spent some time in New York. We're in the tri-state area now. My agency is actually headquartered in Manhattan. So back from, tiny little Wasilla, Alaska, all the way up to Manhattan. But I've never lost that passion for small business. It's the stories that really drive it home for me, because when you go into a corporate entity, and I've worked with some corporate offices before, it's very impersonal, right? Everybody has a story, but you are brought into a bigger group. It's a bubble. Everybody identifies within that corporate mission, and there's less individualistic components in a corporate office than there is in a small business environment. In a small business, everyone from the owner to the front desk receptionist has a story, and that's a part of the business. And that's one thing that I've always loved. One of my favorite things, I was the marketer that when I had a client, I would sit out there when they were going to open up a shop and be out there at 1:00 in the morning helping them set up their display stands in their shop, because that's what I love to do. I love that moment before the big opening, before that grand opening, before you fully take that leap. That moment, it's completely electric, and I've never I've spent most of my life chasing that moment, right? And being able to be a part of the community of small business owners that chase that same dream has been extremely rewarding for me. One of the hardest things about working with small businesses is we see a lot of the start of the people who get to that grand opening day and it's exciting and everything else. What we see less of is those people that pass that 5-year mark or that 10-year mark or that 20-year mark with that same sense of enthusiasm. Things happen in that time frame. Small business ownership is not easy. It's not this wild ride that, you know, is perpetuated in a lot of entrepreneurial coaching and all of that. It's a hard road to walk. According to the SBA, the Small Business Administration, a lot of small businesses close within their first 5 years, actually more than half, due to cash flow issues. They're not able to maintain their budget. They don't know the difference between their expenditures and the revenue coming in, and debt piles up and they have to close down. That's the biggest cause of failure in small business. Another thing is personnel issues. You know, people just aren't able to handle all the regulations that come with hiring employees and what all that entails, so they can't grow, so they get frustrated, they get overwhelmed, and they close down, or they just lose passion for what they're doing because, like I said, that day in, day out, having to be the one making the decisions all the time is really, really rough. And I've been walking that journey myself and with a lot of other business owners throughout my career. I've worked with more than 200 clients, and that's what really drove me to write First Dollar Feeling, was the stories, right? So I've spent some time in addition to being a marketing and communications person, I've also spent some time as a freelance and staff reporter for a lot of local papers focusing on business features. And so I've really entrenched myself in sharing and learning more about each one of these individual stories. So that's what led to First Dollar Feeling. So my biggest piece of advice for business owners who are working through all of these different areas, whether you're thriving and you're struggling through that growth thing, because there's pain in growth as well as there is pain in loss, is reach out to your community. Find a mentor. We have a mentorship and community support page on the First Dollar Feeling Project at firstdollarfeeling.com. Where I've linked several different organizations that can connect you with a mentor or other support for your unique needs. I would love to be able to have everybody individually, but I am one person. So I've worked with a whole bunch of other organizations to be able to find those connections where you are. Another thing is to reach out to your small business community. You know, that's my history growing up in a small town where everyone had a small business or knew someone who owned the local shops. You know, that sense of community, that sense of pulling together really helps to drive you forward when things are going wrong and when things are going very right. So I encourage you to reach out to your small business community to build those relationships before you need them, because they're all walking the same road as you, and most of them will be willing to help you and join you in that journey, and they're going to understand it better than most other people in your life. Like, that's just the reality. Entrepreneurship is a very unique environment, and not everybody's going to understand it unless they are entrenched in it themselves. So this week, again, in addition to celebrating my birthday, I'm celebrating 16 years of working with small businesses. And I invite you to check out the First Dollar Feeling Project and everything we've got going on there, all of the resources. That's a passion project for me. That has been a culmination of all of that 16 years of experience, all of that life of small business. Living and support is all there, and we're going to grow into it even more. First Dollar Feeling is available on Amazon. It features the stories of 9 different entrepreneurs, including my own. If you want to hear more about how I got to where I am, that is in there as well, completely raw and unfiltered. And then we are also launching an online magazine, Tales from the Trenches, where we talk about various stories in small business development from various industries, innovative ways that you've made your business succeed, things that you've learned from struggles that you've had. So if you have a story that you would like to share, it's completely free to submit your story. It's completely free to have it published, but we are selective in which stories we choose. But if you have a story about your small business that you would like to share with the rest of the world, with your small business community, go to www.firstdollarfeeling.com, submit your story on the link. There's a whole little button there that says submit your story. I'll review it. If it's chosen for publication, I will follow up with you. You'll get a one-on-one interview, and we'll publish you in the latest edition of our online magazine, Tales from the Trenches, which will be coming out later this year. Anyway, so that's our First Dollar Friday for this week. I hope you guys have a great weekend and celebrate those small businesses in your community this week. Happy weekend. Talk to you next week.